This week I'm not in the Lake District, I'm actually in Cornwall, where I'm going to be trying my hand at a few seascapes. So why, you might be wondering, am I currently stood in the middle of Dartmoor? Well, that is a very good question. So Tom, why are we here in the middle of Dartmoor?
We are still on the top of Great Civil Tour because we're doing a little scouting mission for next weekend's free workshop.
That's the last of our free workshops.
It is, yeah.
And we're also going to be starting to put together our plans for future workshops later in the year.
Yes, we are.
And next year.
Around December will probably be hopefully our first one, I reckon.
The shot that I had got set up was very dependent on there being some side light. And unfortunately, the sun has now gone behind a bank of cloud. And on this occasion, no light, no shot. This is the harbour at Boscastle where I'm staying this week, and I think the nicest thing that we can say about the weather today is that it's a bit Cumbrian. It's a little bit windy and a little bit rainy this morning, but it's actually quite bright, and in these conditions I should be able to find enough contrast to get a reasonable shot. So I've come to the S-bend that leads into Boscastle Harbour, and I'm going to try and get a shot down here. Although it isn't actually raining at the moment, there is a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, and that means I keep getting droplets of water on the polarizer that I'm using to cut out the glare on these wet rocks. One of the reasons why I wanted to try and become a full-time landscape photographer was to spend a bit more time with my parents. And that's why this week I've come to Cornwall to spend time with my mum, who lives here in Boscastle. This afternoon I've come up onto the cliffs above where I was shooting this morning to get that classic view of Boscastle Harbour from just below the flagpole. I've shot this scene many times before, and in the past I've often made the mistake of not creating enough separation between my foreground and the harbour itself. This time I've got the big Benrow set up nice and high. One of the hardest things to do here on the North Cornish coast is to find a location that works well at sunrise. And that's why this morning I've come to Padstow. Padstow sits on the western side of the Camel estuary and looking over to Rock. So on mornings like this we should get a little bit of colour in the sky. Now, I don't know Padstow very well. I've never shot here seriously, and therefore I don't really know my composition. But sometimes landscape photography can be just as easy as tipping up to a location, finding a bit of foreground interest and pointing your camera at the rising sun. Last night I met up with my good friend and fellow YouTube photographer Julian Baird, and we went for a very challenging shoot at Trebarwith Strand, just along the coast from Boscastle. It was incredibly windy. The wind was blowing from offshore and it was churning the sea up into a white foam and sending sea spray high up onto the cliffs above. Despite all that, I still managed to get one shot. Now, it is little more than a snapshot, but I think it tells a great story of our afternoon at Trebarwith Strand. This morning I've come to Bossiney, which is between Boscastle and Tintagel. And although the wind has died down a little bit, it is still causing me a few problems. I had a good look round for compositions, and what I've decided to do is go for a shot of this headland here. So what I've done is I've cracked out the big lens and I'm going for a few long exposures. In order to make the camera as stable as I possibly can, I've had to spread the legs on that massive Benro tripod. And even then I'm still having to shelter the camera from the gusting wind. And to make matters worse, it's just started raining. If you can hear me above the waves, I've now come down to a small cove just beneath where I was shooting earlier called Crackington Haven. And I'm going to see if I can find a shot round here, probably using this little sea arch right behind me. I will be honest, I'm rather struggling with the weather this morning. The combination of howling gales and lashing rain are not my favourite conditions for photography. So right now I am sheltering inside the archway. It's starting to brighten up a little bit now, so I'm going to head out there and see if I can't grab a couple of other shots. So wish me luck. The wind is becoming a bit of a feature of my time in Cornwall. Last night I went to Widmouth Bay, and if anything the wind was even stronger than we experienced the evening before at Trebarwith Strand. The wind was so strong that on this occasion I didn't even take the camera out of the bag. Now it might have been different had I been with one of my mates. We tend to gee each other along a little bit, but because I was on my own and conditions were so tough, I just didn't fancy it. I did make one big mistake yesterday at Widmouth Bay, and that was not doing my research. I'd never been there before, and when I turned up I was actually quite uninspired by Widmouth Bay as a location, and had I done my research I might not have wasted my time yesterday evening. One location that I have visited before is the castle here at Tintagel, but since I was last here they've put in this fantastic new bridge, and so this morning I'm going to try and get a shot of that. I'm shooting quite wide, about 19mm, and this is actually a tricky shot to expose. I'm exposing for the highlights in the hope that I can pull enough detail out of the shadows as possible. All I need to do is time it so that I get a nice wave coming up the beach, so I've got some interest in the bottom right hand of the frame. I've come down to the beach just below where I was shooting earlier, and I've been here for about an hour or so, trying different compositions and different kind of things. And in the end I settled for a shot that's using this rock as its primary subject. I did try a number of different things, and in the end I decided that because we're quite closed in this little cove here, that I wanted to try and simplify my composition as much as possible and to remove as many distracting elements as possible. So what I did was I used a relatively long focal length, about 50mm, and I focused in on the rock itself, and then I used a long exposure to remove any detail from the sea. I I haven't had an awful lot of luck with my evening shoots this week, and this evening looks to be no exception. I've come up to the lookout point just outside Boscastle, and it is blowing an absolute gale. And what I've had to do is shelter here behind the lookout station. Now, I wouldn't have any problems at all if all of the interest was in that direction, but it isn't. It's in exactly the opposite direction, shooting directly into that gale force wind. My plan for this evening was to shoot the coast in that direction, using the cliff edge as a bit of foreground interest. I did grab a shot on the way up here, but there is so much more potential, I might have to get the camera out and have another go. This is the beach at Dawlish Warren, and I've always wanted to come here because it's the home turf of one of my best YouTube mates, Julian Baird. And Jules is just over there, and apparently he's working a groin. This is very different to what I'm used to shooting. It's all about timing, really. It's all about waiting for that wave to come up and then just catch it as it's receding. And normally, timing isn't an element in my photography, so it's something a little bit different and a little bit more challenging than I'm used to. Personally, I really like locations like this. They're so simple, free from distraction. And this is really my cup of tea. Whether I got the shot, well, at least I had a go. This is Crackington Haven, the last of my coastal locations here in the north of Cornwall. And I've arrived nice and early, just waiting for my mate Tom to arrive. It's been raining all day and I'm so pleased that it stopped. But I've never been to Crackington before, and looking round, I'm not sure where the compositions are, so I'm hoping Tom gets here soon. Tom has led me down to this little bit of rock that sticks out into the sea. It's got fantastic leading lines leading the eye out. Now, I am surrounded on three sides by the sea. I don't feel very comfortable, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a long exposure done and then I'm going to get back up there.
Walk around like this,
Yeah.
and I'll just, you know, and until I'm happy, and then I'll say I've got 2 or 3 comps that I think might work, then I get the tripod out.
It is Saturday morning. I'm back here on Dartmoor for the workshop, and it couldn't have gone better. We really lucked out with the weather. The forecast was for rain, but actually it's been dry for most of the time. We're also really lucky to get some mist on the hills surrounding us, so we're able to take some shots of that. But also, because it's heavily overcast today, we were able to take some pictures of the tour and really allow that soft light to bring out some of the detail in the rock. So that's it, Tom, workshop over. I certainly really enjoyed myself this morning. How'd you get on?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. It's nice to get out in the hills, or Dartmoor hills for that matter. It's nice to meet new people.
Yep, I think we'll do some more there.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Went very well, very well.
This is my 15th and final location, Rame Head on the South Cornish coast. And I am absolutely knackered. I'm here with Tom and we're just scouting this out for our next workshop. This is the chapel here at Rame, and this is what we've been photographing this afternoon. We started at the bottom and we worked our way up, basically working the same composition. Each time the chapel getting bigger and bigger in the frame. So that's it, that's the end of my week in Cornwall. I'm heading back up the road first thing in the morning. If you want to join Tom and I at our workshop here at Rame Head, then there'll be details in the description below.